When my sales and margin are not growing,
Hmm.
at least at the industry growth rate and hopefully higher, my strategy is off. I either don't have the right strategy or the people inside are not delivering it correctly and it's not working.
Hey everyone, Chris G again, and another episode of A Titan's Tale. And today we're in for a treat. I've got Herb Cogliano here today, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, and we're going to discuss culture and teamwork and how that all comes about with the mindset of a CEO. So please help me welcome Herb. How you doing today?
Uh, Chris, it is a pleasure to be here with you and your audience. I am doing wonderful and excited to be on your show.
Thank you, Herb. Can you tell us a little bit about your history before we get started?
Yeah, so like many of your listeners, I grew up an entrepreneur in a family business. So I was around it my entire life and loved hearing and learning about how other people ran their companies and became successful. Our family business was around for 54 years before we had an exit in 2018. I was the CEO for the last 25 years and had an amazing journey with a talented group of people, scaling up the company, becoming an Inc. 5000 fastest growing firm. And to your earlier comment, building a best places to work culture where we really found that the company could do well financially while doing good by the people in the community that we served.
I worked for a family-owned business as well in my corporate life. What were some of the challenges you guys felt dealt with as a family-owned business?
I think at the end of the day, it's a business.
Hmm.
And if family members were not aligned with developing themselves, being accountable, being aligned with the values, then you can have a problem with the family business. So
Gotcha.
I think it was, even though it was a family business, we acted like a professional sports team. We were all talented. We all wanted a bigger future, and all of us were willing to be accountable to get it.
And you don't have to be family to have those same issues in a business. The only difference really is that you got to have Thanksgiving and Christmas together, right? So,
I think you are 100% correct. Yes.
well,
Yes.
you talk about, and I got my notes here, some mindset of a CEO, and I'd like to dive into that deeper because later on I want to talk about culture even further and team leadership. But tell me about your philosophy on mindset with a CEO.
Yeah. So I work a lot with small mid-market companies, probably a couple of million to 150 million a year kind of size.
Hmm.
And a lot of those people, at least 5 million to 50 million, don't always think of themselves as a CEO. They think of themselves as the business owner, the founder.
Right.
And what happens is that they start the business, they work extremely hard, they're very good at something, and the business grows. And then they end up hiring people around them that are very good at things they are not. So that's easy. They have a lot of authority. They make 90+% of all the decisions. The people working for them are able to do things, and the business is healthy. But when you get to the next level, you need a group of leaders around the owner that have the ability to make decisions, work independently, be accountable so that the owners can spend more time driving growth in the company versus managing day to day. I call it working more on the business than being stuck working in it.
I call it, I talk about uh, be able to let go, but staying in the know. You got to let go of some of that stuff, but you got to be in the know of it. And the other part is, I love the part about you don't want to own anything, but you want to control everything.
Yes.
And in the same concept of let your team do what they need to do, and then but you still have to have at the end of the day you're still responsible, but you got to have to be able to scale. Like I think we're going to talk about later, is that those people have to have the ability to make decisions and feel empowered too, right?
Yes, and the ability to switch your mindset from the mindset of I have a great group of people, when I ask them to get something done, they get it done, to the mindset of I don't want to ask them or tell them what should be done. I want them to be independent and leading on their own. So I go from a mindset of telling people, directing people, to a mindset of coaching and developing people. And so what I found was we were very good at sales. We were bringing in very large accounts. But then I had a mindset shift where I went from selling to coaching and developing the top leadership in my team so that they could run a sales team, run an operations team, run a finance team, while I worked on acquisitions, strategic partnerships, joint ventures that I never had time to do earlier in my career. That one shift gave me more time to work on the company than I ever had in the entire 20 years prior. But nobody taught me how to coach and develop. They taught me how to sell. They taught me how to read the profit and loss statement. And so that was kind of a journey of development in becoming a better CEO.
Now we talk about empowerment for those people, but I'm trying to think of the word. How do we get them to, and it's part of the coaching, I'm sure, to they feel not only empowered, but they feel that they can give suggestions on how to improve. Is that just part of the empowerment, or is that something different that we have to encourage those people that we're willing to listen to you and have a conversation?
Yeah. There's a book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Leadership Team, and it's by Patrick Lencioni. And one of the biggest dysfunctions is trust.
Yeah.
And trust begins with vulnerability. So when the owner or CEO is vulnerable and willing to listen and take insight or opinion, doesn't mean you have to do everything everybody says. But when you create that space for vulnerability, you build trust, and your leadership team wants to give you more opinions and input.
When I think about it, I talk about having faith. You got to have faith in those people. And even though that they might make mistakes, and they're going to, I imagine, everybody does,
Yes.
but you got to be able to coach them, say, okay, you did this. I appreciate that you made a decision to begin with. And, I might have made a different decision. That's okay. But here's how I'd like to happen next time. If you really feel strongly about what they did was wrong, but sometimes you just got to let go and be happy that it got done. And it might even got done more efficiently than you had originally thought of, too.
Yes. Yes. You know what? I always start with the question, what would you do differently next time, knowing what you know today?
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And that really tells me if they learned something from the mistake. And if they did, wonderful coaching moment. If they didn't, then you have an opportunity to do a reset right there.
In a previous business I worked at, it was a challenge, but I changed the culture of the business. It took 3 or 4 years worth of just hounding constantly and getting different people in place and in charge. But how, when you're teaching a team, and it might not be possible to teach this, but how do you know if somebody can think outside the box sometimes? They don't have to be so confined to the SOPs of the world that sometimes SOPs are made to be broken because they're not right in this situation.
Sure.
Do you teach that, or is it kind of a trait somebody has?
I do think some people are better at it than others.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that's because some people spend more time at it. For example, um, we had a culture of brainstorming all of our major challenges and opportunities. So when you get in a room and say, hey guys, we're just going to brainstorm here for a minute. I'm not going to take anything literally, but let's just start throwing ideas up on the board. How can we solve this? And you'll get some crazy outside the box. And then
Mhm.
you'll get some stuff that's in the box or on the fringe, but that's where you begin. And because you built trust and faith and you're vulnerable, people feel comfortable to participate and start to build that type of culture. It will not happen on its own. And if you put people down, if you belittle an idea or make them feel stupid about an idea, they'll never open up their mouth again.
Agreed. Now, there's always different types of people in those meetings. And I always like taking those outside the box ideas and running it past my more conservative people saying, what's wrong with that
Yes,
problem?
yes,
And
yes.
because they're going to see it a whole different way than, because the person outside idea might be thinking the same way I do, but I know that there's always something there that you got to look at it a different way. So you encourage everybody, right, to participate.
Yeah, Chris, we did two things. Number one, devil's advocate, what you said,
Mm-hmm.
have another person. And if you've ever done any debate team type stuff, I'll have the same person that came up with the out of the box idea
Yeah.
do it again, taking the exact opposite position and
And then
have
kind of
them
rethink it,
have
rehash it
them.
through.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that really creates some very interesting dynamic, but I think you get your best. The most important asset our company had was the collective intelligence of our team. And how many companies do not access or tap that most important asset, and it's right in front of them? I remember hearing a story about Jack Welch at GE.
Mm-hmm.
He was touring one of his many manufacturing plants, and there was a gentleman that had been there 35 years. And Jack Welch went over to say hello, introduce himself. He did. And the gentleman said, you know, Jack, I want to let you know you had my body here for 35 years. I wish you had used more of my mind because I had so much more I could give you. And, you know, Jack took that personal because he was a big advocate of education in development. But the fact that one employee didn't feel like they could have given the best of themselves made him go back and continue to work on it even harder to get people's contribution.
That leads into a perfect question I have written down here. Is there a perfect size of employment that I have a number, but I wanted to know if you guys have a number that is just perfect for a company. No, to get no larger than, and I'm not dollar wise, I'm talking about just employees.
Yeah. I think it's situational to the
Mm-hmm.
ownership.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, Chris, as you get to a different size of employee, it's the complexity that makes people stall. What do I mean by that? The more employees you have, the
Mm-hmm.
more products you offer, the more locations you own, the more territories you sell in, makes it exponentially complex to deal with communication, collaboration, in decision making throughout the entire organization.
Sure.
So when you get from 12 to 25 employees, you still may know everybody's name, but you also are delegating the things as an owner you're not good at, and that makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to 50 to 100 employees,
Yep.
you don't always know every employee's name, their spouse, their children. You now have to start delegating things you're really good at, like sales or operation, so you can spend more time working on the company versus in it. So you don't know the people as well, and now you have to start delegating things that you really like to do when you started the business, and that complexity makes some people say, time out, I'm good right here. I don't want to go any farther. And I call those companies lifestyle companies. You
Mhm.
build exactly the size company that fits you, your schedule, your income, the type of work you like to do. You put the people around you. And if you stayed that size the next 20 years, you'd be very happy.
And that's okay, isn't it?
It is, but I'm going to tell you the realization I came to.
Okay.
We had kind of stalled for a little bit. We'd been around 25 years. We were very well known, but geographically, we were only in one region. More competition was coming in every year. Our products and service started to become commoditized. That hurt our margins. Our profits were starting to decrease.
Mhm.
And if we didn't do something about it, it would ultimately put you out of business.
So if you're not growing, you're dying eventually.
Exactly. So two things. Number one, the business can die. But number two, if you're an A player and you're not the owner and you work for Chris,
Mhm.
the company isn't growing, but you're an A player. A players want bigger futures, bigger opportunities. And my epiphany was, it may be okay for Herb for the next 20 years, but it's not going to be okay for every other A player. And if I don't commit to growing the company for all of us, not just for me, then I can
Mhm.
lose the actual company itself. And once we had that epiphany, we never looked back. It was growth, bigger futures, bigger purpose. We look at purpose with profits. We think there's a double bottom line. We can give back to the people we work with and serve, and we can financially do well because we do great work. Those two things together, for me and my team, was the perfect combination, purpose with profits.
For those people who, let's say, had the lifestyle company and don't want to grow, but they know they need to, like what you're saying, you could put somebody else in place, right? In place of you, and you be really just an investor instead of the true, you're still in charge because you own it, but you have
Yeah.
somebody else that's reporting back to you. You're replacing that COO, I guess is what they call it. Is that right? Or
Yeah.
even the CEO, whatever. You're putting somebody else in place of you to do what you're saying needs to happen so the company doesn't die. Because, like you said, it might be okay with Herb or Chris in the long term. You've got X amount of people working for you that their livelihoods are dependent on this for whatever reason, whether like egg growth, they just thrive on being better, or just the basic guys that are happy to take care of their families. You got to take care of everybody. And I feel that responsibility when you hire someone.
Yes.
That's a, so,
Chris, I have an amazing company that just made the Inc. 5000 fastest growing company list.
mhm.
And the owner came to me a couple of years ago and said, look, I started the business. I love the business, but I don't want to be the CEO or head of the company. I love working. They do natural stone. I love working with the machinery. I love working in the shop. I love working with the guys. If equipment breaks or helping training them, but I don't want to be the head of the company. So he had an amazing number two in his company.
Yeah.
And that person is very bright, wanted to progress in his career. And we've had an amazing succession plan coaching him and the leadership team to run the actual day-to-day, while the owner is still 100% owner, but also runs the machine shop in the people that are in there doing that work. So he got the best of both worlds. I'm so happy for him, but those are the possibilities if you set it up right.
And I'm assuming setting up right means that, I don't know how he did it, but you got to share some of that with that gentleman, that number two person, right? Because what to keep him from going and doing his own? He's got to feel like he feels part of the, he might not be the owner, but he's got to feel like he's getting some of the benefit of
Yes.
doing what he's doing, right?
Yeah, he's treated extremely well. And if think of a succession, any great succession plan
Mm-hmm.
is a process with checks and balances to make sure that the succession goes well versus just giving somebody the keys to your company. So what do I mean by that? Number one, the second person was absolutely a core value fit. Him and the owner were very aligned on the values as individuals in the way they treated people. Very important. That was step one. Step two was a succession plan in authority. And as their coach, we went through all those elements. When it comes to hiring, who do I have the authority to hire and fire? Is it staff level, mid-management level, executive level? How much can I pay them? What can I purchase for expenses? 5,000 or less? 100,000 or less? What leases can I sign to commit the company to? What line of credit with a bank would you give me authority to sign? But the point was we started in very low levels of authority. And then as he built up credibility with the owner, more and more authority and limits were given. So over the course of a 2-year time, it's literally now a great succession has taken place. And now the head of the company, that second person, is doing a great job. And the owner didn't shoot himself in the foot because he didn't do it too quick, too soon, and make a big mistake.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far away from the mindset traits. Is there other traits that you want to
Yeah.
tackle a little
So
bit?
first trait is really a growth-oriented mindset. We have a bias to take action. If we know our market is growing 10%, scaling up CEOs want to minimally double market growth rate. So if you're growing 10% as an industry, we want to be 20% or more. And these successful CEOs have all had this bigger future growth mindset baked in. Number two, coachable learners. They don't think they know it all. They're very self-aware and they're open-minded to learning from different people, different topics in different formats. Whether they read books, go to conferences, belong to a CEO peer group, they're always trying to be better to give themselves the best advantage as the head of the company. Third thing, they're strategic thinkers. Some owners are very tactical. They know about process. All they care about is, did you call that client back? When is that next sales call? Did you close that deal? Not that that's not important, because it is, but you also, if you want to work on your company, you have to be strategic. What markets, what products, what differentiators are we going to deliver that's going to make us a market leader? And those people have a mindset to think about that. Number four, they are accountable executors. What do I mean by that? They set targets and goals for them and their people, and they deliver. They don't just say, well, you didn't hit it this quarter, you didn't hit it this year, that's okay. And 5 years later, everything's okay and nothing changes. They're not afraid to coach people up, and they're not afraid to coach people out. even if they're friends, if they're not really delivering over time. And I've met too many CEOs that had these real family or deep friendships with staff that worked there for years,
Mm-hmm.
weren't delivering, and yet they didn't coach them up, develop them, and they were unfortunately afraid to top grade them out or coach them out. And it's hurt so many companies by not having that, but the best ones are able to do it. You don't like doing it, you wish you didn't need to do it, but it is part of the job. And the final one is effective communicator. Do people know in your company where you're going? Do they know the vision? Do they know the current status? Is there a level of transparency and repeated communication about the values, your top priorities, what's your 10-year goal, and what are the things we stand for, our purpose? And great CEOs are always communicating those important messages company-wide. Most of my best CEOs do a company-wide video or weekly communication for the entire company every week, 52 weeks a year. You could never say, I don't know what's going on in their companies. And A players really appreciate it.
Kind of like a fireside report or a
Yes.
State of the Union almost.
Yeah, and they're done in like mini capsules. We use very short agendas on keeping it brief, but being consistent and transparent. And everyone loves that. You know, you ever talk to an employee and you hear nobody tells me anything? I don't know what's going on in this company. You never want to hear that if you're the CEO, and yet it happens every day. So effective communicators is the final trait of a high impact CEO.
Does that include even financials? Big picture financials. I don't get into details, but
So we did,
go
yeah,
ahead.
we did open book, Chris, and I'm a believer in it when you give people financial education with it. I would never just share my financials to people that were not educated or understanding about it, but I would put them through some type of financial literacy with my CFO. And to your point, I would do high level
Mm-hmm.
revenue, cost of goods, gross margin, overhead, and operating profit, 5-6 categories only. And then we educate them by comparing it to a family budget.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they like, oh, now I get it. My paycheck is my revenue. My utilities is my cost of goods or overhead. We got Uncle Sam we pay tax to every year, and then whatever's left over. And everybody thinks you're making more than you, everybody always thinks you make more than you do.
Yeah.
But the big joke, we had a family business. The big joke was, do you know I have an Uncle Sam as well as a brother and a sister and a father in the company? And they would laugh because Uncle Sam, you know, got 30% of
Mm-hmm.
every bottom line dollar too. So anyway,
Well, I read a book, the Southwest Airlines, I can't think of the name of it, but it's about Southwest Airlines and how they share their financials. So I decided that in the company I worked at, we were going to do the same thing. We made a whiteboard and we went big picture, here's your sales. And we were a printing company, so there was some cost that everybody was responsible for, like paper was your biggest expense that you have in a printing company. And we always kind of hit the highlights of what that was, showed the budget, showed our goals, how we're going to make these better. And it was always a training, and it seemed to be good because even when you walked around and talked to people, they asked you questions about it.
sure.
And that was really good. On your 5 traits, of the 5, there's one that I think I'm not sure that you can train. And maybe you just do find somebody to put in place of that, and that's strategic thinking versus tactical. Is it something that you can train somebody to be strategic?
Uh,
I mean, I know
uh,
somebody can help, but I
Yes.
mean, they can improve upon it, but is it really a mental thing or is it a personality thing?
No, I think some people are more wired for it, just like
Hmm.
maybe more of a critical thinking mindset.
Yeah.
But I do think it can be taught. So if you get a person in the room and you show them data, let's say you look at monthly customer orders for the last 12 months.
Okay.
And you say now, what is the trend with our customer order activity? Is the volume going up or is it going down or is it flat? And let's say the person says, well, wow, it's going down. And then I'll say, by how much each month? Well, 3%. Okay, point one half of 1%. So what does that tell you? Well, maybe our products are waning. Maybe our salespeople aren't doing a great job last quarter. Maybe marketing needs to do more promotion. Maybe there's a new competitor that just moved in down the street. So
Hmm.
now we start having strategic conversations about what are the reasons behind that. And then I'll say, if this continues, how would our strategy have to change? Do we need to add different products?
Hmm.
Do we need to go to adjacent territories we currently don't sell in? Do we need to buy our biggest competitor to get them off the block? And so you see how by asking the right questions, by showing a little bit of data, you can engage somebody's mind to start to really think that way.
Yes.
Most employees never get talked to that way, Chris.
I'm making some assumptions, and I think they're true assumptions, is that a lot of this information comes through KPIs, right? Key performance indicators.
Yes, yes.
So how do you identify the KPIs? Now, I assume there's some that are just like a given, like sales, cost, but are there any particular, and then it might make, yeah, I'm sure it makes a difference based on the industry, which KPIs are more important than others? Is that a true statement?
I think there's always industry differences, but there are a lot of standards like sales, order volume, margin percentage. Those are really big, simple indicators that will immediately tell you. And there's a big picture thing here, Chris. My strategy in the market, the products I offer, the people I sell them to, and the uniqueness of my offer do one thing. They grow my sales and margin. When my sales and margin are not growing,
Hmm.
at least at the industry growth rate and hopefully higher, my strategy is off. I either don't have the right strategy or the people inside are not delivering it correctly and it's not working.
We always compared ourselves to not key performance, profit leader status. We were part of the association that shared
Oh,
profit leader
sure. Yeah,
statuses.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then obviously that was your goal. And if you beat it, that's even better. And trying to figure out that fine strategy, that fine line of what you were doing and what they were doing and making it better and so forth. Can you tell me some stories on how you have either implemented yourself or other people that you've coached or mentored that have implemented some of this stuff and success?
I'll give you an example. We had one client that started with a very low operating profit,
Hmm.
below industry average. And they were a good company with a good brand, but they kept hiring people because they thought that's what they should do to grow, just keep hiring people. But we we used some of the tools in scaling up, and we started to look at their labor efficiency. It was a service company, so it's predominantly labor that you're dealing with for your big cost. And
Hmm.
what we learned was their labor was not really efficient. Their hiring, the amount of people, the people's productivity. And when we figured out the labor efficiency in relation to the operating profit that they wanted, and then we corrected the labor efficiency, coached people better, hired better the right people, got rid of the people that really were not chronically achieving, their operating profit went from, I don't know, let's say around 5% to 25% in 18 months. They 5x'd their bottom line, and they probably 10 to 20x'd the valuation of his firm.
I'll tell a story that we had a company that was had sales. It was having great sales, but every time they got more sales, the management at the time decided that they had to have more people.
Yes.
And the wrong. Anyway, so the accountants come back and said, if you continue to sell, you're going to go out of business, because it's like, no, that's not that can't be done. And they had a tendency to want to turn the sales on, turn sales off. Well, that, at least in my experience, you don't just turn sales on, turn sales off. It's an ongoing process with marketing and contact and so forth. So long story short, we went from 180 people down to 120 people, ended up going from, at that point, 16 million to 22 million. And through different ways, hiring the better people, cross training. That was a lot of things we did to make that happen, and some investment in equipment that it's like you just can't hire people all the time, and it doesn't work that way type. So that's awesome. I kind of cheated and listened to a few of the other podcasts you've done, and you have a 4 points of scaling.
Yes.
Can you discuss that a little bit with us?
Yeah. So when you look at, I think one of the biggest obstacles to grow is the owner's commitment to developing, training, retaining the senior leader team. But let's say you're doing that and that's working great. That senior team has to deal with 4 decision areas correctly in order for that company to scale. What are they? People. Do you have any drama in your company? When I first start talking to an owner, there's some form of drama. And when I say drama, it could be with employees, it could be with customer drama, it could be supplier drama, or it could be a fellow shareholder or partner. But wherever there's drama, we have to work on better people decisions to get the drama out of your company so you can focus together on implementing your strategy and growing your company. So we have very specific tools for people decisions that when you use them with your team, you make better people decisions and the drama starts to go away. The next one is strategy. Like we mentioned, if your revenue, top line, and margin is not growing at the right rate or better, you absolutely have a strategy issue. And we have tools that help you assess, who is my ideal core customer? What is my ideal brand promise that's unique and valued that allows us to go to market and get traction? And then we have execution. You can have a great strategy, bring a lot of business in the door, but not make any money. Have you met the company where people work about 80 hours a week and make little to no money at the end of the year? That's all execution. So if you don't have the right people doing the right things right, you have poor execution, and that's not a good business model you want to scale. And then the final thing is cash. Cash is like oxygen for a company. When I first meet people, they're worried about, if they're having a problem with cash, they're worried about keeping the lights on. But I think the bigger problem is when you're growing is opportunity cash. Imagine that executive you always wanted to hire is finally available, but you can't afford them. Or what about that company you wanted to buy down the road that the owner's finally ready to sell, but you can't fund the purchase of it? So we call that opportunity cash. And so we're always working on building cash minimally to keep the business open and successful. But opportunity cash is the cash that really makes difference for really scaling and taking advantage of market growth.
Is that opportunity cash part of a plan, or is there a percentage? How do you?
It's part of a plan of managing. We want to help owners do three things. Number one, the number one accountability of the owner is their business valuation. If you want to give them one Uber KPI, what's the value of your company when you started it? And what's the value of your company today? And is that a good return? So it's pretty simple. But we help the leadership team work on growing cash and profits, while the growth of cash and profits enable the growth of your company's valuation. So if the owner focuses on getting the right leadership team in place and recruits and develops them, they're helping the owner grow valuation by growing the cash and profits in it. And that's why it's such a big stuck, and many people don't even see it.
You had mentioned one book already. Is there other books or podcasts or things that you recommend people listen to or read to be a better CEO?
Yeah, so Chris, like many of your audience, read a lot of great books on a lot of great topics in my life, but the one book that literally changed my business life is the book Scaling Up. So
Who's that by?
yeah, Scaling Up is by Vern Harnish. I've been practicing the Scaling Up methodology for over 22 years, using it in every company that we've started or built. And if you didn't go to grad school or you don't have an MBA, they don't teach a class on scaling up. They teach classes on marketing and accounting and operations. Think of this as a small mid-market company growth playbook. They put all of the methodology in one place to help you improve your odds of growing your company profitably, without drama, and having more fun.
Well, Herb, it's been a pleasure having you today, and you've given us a lot of good information. How would somebody get hold of you if they wanted to do some business with you, or even just pick your brain and have lunch type thing?
Yeah, so one of the things that we offer is that for those of you that want to discover what your high impact CEO score is, how well are you as a CEO, and maybe what are some of those gaps that you can even be better? On my website, we have a link. It's complimentary. You're welcome to take the assessment and find out where you stand. For those owners that want to find out your Scaling Up readiness score, how ready is my company to start scaling to the next level, and identify the gaps of where you're not ready, that's also on the main page, and that's complimentary for you to do an assessment to see where you and your company stand. You simply go to Aspire Growth Advisors with an S.com, and you will see that information right on the homepage.
Awesome. And as always, if you're driving or walking or jogging and listening to the podcast, you can always go to titanstail.com and find Herb Cogliano, Cogliano, in our directory of guests, and find all the information that Herb just mentioned. Herb, we thank you for your time today. It's been very educational, and you've been a great Titan sharing your tales today.
Oh, you are so welcome. I really enjoyed it, and all the best to you, Chris, and all your listeners out there. Keep scaling.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.